Get this, Brian Friedman has yet to even see Stephanie Jones's alleged subpoena, and now he is questioning if it was even ever filed. So now Justin Baldoni's legal team is questioning whether the document was valid since it was supposedly sent out before any legal moves had been taken by either side. And Brian Friedman is claiming that Stephanie Jones only passed on the messages out of spite. And Friedman said that there's no doubt that Stephanie Jones willingly and maliciously spread private and confidential communications concerning her former clients in an effort to humiliate them and destroy the fledgling business and reputation of their former employee. She did so purely out of spite and prior to any phantom subpoena that we have yet to see. And according to Friedman, a subpoena requires a case number from a filed legal case to be referenced, and no case was ever filed against Jones or anyone prior to her giving Blake those text messages. But Jones's attorney hit back, saying more distractions and still no defense for what the whole world saw in those text messages. Hey, Stephanie Jones's attorneys, what did we see in those text messages? You know, not the cherry-picked ones, I mean the original text messages. We literally saw Justin Baldoni and his PR team saying, like, we don't even need to do anything because Blake is ruining everything for herself. Jones's attorney went on to say if Mr. Baldoni or his attorneys believe the subpoena legally requiring Ms. Jones to turn over is fake, he should sign an affidavit saying so, and we look forward to the discovery process. So as we know now, Friedman has yet to see the subpoena. He questions whether it was even filed and notes the inconsistencies in the timeline. The Daily Mail had exclusively reviewed a copy of the purported subpoena dated October 1st of 2024. It says it was filed in Manhattan Supreme Court, but it has no court stamp on it. Signed by an attorney working for the New York law firm of Mannett, Phelps, and Phillips, who represent Lively and her husband, actor Ryan Reynolds. It orders Jones to hand over all documents and communications concerning Lively and Reynolds and their companies. Would I be shocked if this was a fake subpoena? No.
Stephanie Jones actually have a subpoena for the text messages that were leaked, not only to Blake Lively, but to the New York Times? Well, that's what she's claiming now, and we've got to get into it. So there's been a lot of chatter about this, kind of like people who are in the deep tea of Blake Lively versus Justin Baldoni. And so this came across my timeline. I've seen different things about it. I was waiting to talk about it because I just want to get my hands more about on the legal implications of this, if this is actually true or not. Something about this whole thing reads very foul, just like everything about this entire case reads very foul. It doesn't just read foul, it is foul. And especially as you look at the evidence and receipts that Justin Baldoni has, it's absolutely ridiculous on its face that these falsehoods and these narratives are being spun about him in Wayfarer. But we've got to get into it because I want to bring you guys all the information. And again, this is a moving target right now, because as things come, we have a certain set of facts, then more things are leaked, more things come out, and a lot of things are not being, it's like Blake Lively's side, and obviously with Stephanie Jones, we haven't seen any of their evidence. Like, they just make claims, and then anything they try to cobble together, well, it's text messages taken out of context. They don't really support their claim. And then outside of that, there's no other evidence. We've seen people like Isabella Ferrer, who's basically like, I didn't see Justin do anything wrong. And distancing herself from Blake Lively. Insider on her site came out with all this information once it was revealed by Elsrich that all of her on her Instagram, she's like quietly deleting any traces of her with Blake Lively. So it's interesting to say the least, but let's get into the details. And if you know anything, I would say the best way to hit me up is, if you can, is through X, like message me through there. That's the way I've been getting some of the tea that I get. I've even had people try to send me fake stuff about Justin Baldoni, and I just look at it on his face and I'm just like, you're straight up lying. Don't. Like literally people are trying to undermine Justin Baldoni by sending people like myself, and I'm sure other people, fake information and hoping that we jump on it and somehow put it out there and turn on Justin Baldoni. But there is nothing, absolutely nothing right now that will have me turn on Justin Baldoni, unless there is like a tape confession of him admitting he did all this stuff to her. But even the things that they're claiming that he did to her and that Jamie Heath did to her, they're not sexual harassment by any stretch of the imagination. And it's taking innocuous and benign interactions and spinning it into a narrative of sexual harassment, when, quite frankly, you can actually see Blake physically touching people, which I would consider sexual harassment in a sexual way. You heard going on and on about Brandon Sklenar's butt and sexualizing him in front of people, making him turn around to look at his butt. Like really things that could be put together as
Justin Baldoni's ex-publicist Stephanie Jones actually subpoenaed for her texts? Or was it all fake? I'm a California attorney and I read what happened, so you don't have to. Stephanie Jones has claimed that it was a court order that made her turn over her texts with Jen Abel and others that revealed the alleged smear campaign against Blake Lively. But Justin Baldoni's attorney is refuting this and calling the subpoena fake. Justin's attorney has stated, there is no doubt that Stephanie Jones willingly and maliciously spread private and confidential communications concerning her former clients in an effort to humiliate them and destroy the fledgling businesses and reputation of her former employee. She did so purely out of spite and prior to any phantom subpoena that we have yet to see. Jones's attorney has responded, stating more distractions and still no defense for what the whole world saw in those text messages. If Mr. Baldoni or his attorney believed the subpoena, legally requiring Ms. Jones to turn over the damning evidence demonstrating his client orchestrated a smear campaign against Ms. Lively is fake, he should sign an affidavit saying so, and we look forward to the discovery process. The Daily Mail has stated that they viewed a copy of the alleged subpoena, and while it has a date and it says it was filed in the Manhattan Supreme Court, it does not have a court stamp on it. Let me know your thoughts on the subpoena down below.
Is a brand new creator for me as well, came up on my feed. I don't know too much about them. I don't know where they stand, if they are objective or if they are biased. I don't know. I kind of have the feeling that they're biased towards Blake. I don't know. I could be wrong on that. But the thing is like, okay, I understand that it's mentioned in documents that there was a subpoena for this information, but why wasn't it talked about sooner? Stephanie Jones was sued weeks ago. Why didn't she say then that she had been subpoenaed for the phone records? Why didn't she say it then? Why is she just saying it now? That was October that they had those phone records. We're going into 5 months plus since those phone records were handed over. When Stephanie Jones received that phone, it was either the same day or the day after Leslie Sloane was hitting that side up, was hitting the Wayfarer side up and saying, I've seen the phone records, expect to be sued. So you tell me, how did a subpoena get issued that fast? And then the information that was being requested in the subpoena turned over within that amount of time. Doesn't it have to go to a judge and get signed off? Like, I don't know the whole deal with getting subpoenas issued. But I think what most of the lawyers here on TikTok and YouTube are asking is that what action did that subpoena come from? And they're being very vague and elusive and obtuse about it. They're not divulging that. Why are you not divulging what it was? Because if at the end of the day, if Blake Lively was suing Stephanie Jones, coming after Stephanie Jones, or about to, why aren't you stating that? Why wouldn't Stephanie Jones say that? They're clearly not working with each other, if that's the case. Okay? And especially now that Stephanie Jones is being sued. See, like, that's the thing. Like, this stuff would not have come out had Stephanie Jones not been sued. Nobody would have said this. But again, she was sued weeks ago. Why didn't she say it then? Why are you now waiting weeks later to say, oh, this was from a subpoena? It just seems very strange. And I think that's where a lot of lawyers are like, their ears are perking up. When something is not, it's out of the ordinary. It's not the standard way of doing things. And there is no action that's within this lawsuit or this group of lawsuits that they can say, okay, this is why the subpoena was issued. That's going to bring more scrutiny. Now, whether they want the scrutiny or not, they're not being transparent about how this all came to be. Now, I do understand what I did listen to, or I was reading in the comments from MJ Lawyer, is that if this subpoena was filed like in federal court, it may not necessarily be on the docket. It may not necessarily be recorded. I guess, I don't know. Again, there's so much that us, the outsiders that are not familiar with the process of law and all of that and filing all these different things within the courts happens unless you yourself have gone through it. I've gone through a civil lawsuit before, but it was much different because it was an injury case. I've never gone through this kind of civil lawsuit, so I don't know. I know very little bit about how this stuff actually happens. I know it takes time though. So, I don't know. It's very sketchy and it's very, very fishy. And I think that's what is like coming up as a red flag for a lot of these lawyers. And I don't think that they're trying to just get views. I think they are seriously, realistically questioning, well, how did this subpoena come to be? And I think it's a valid question. We want to know, where did it come from? Why is it only being produced now? And why is it still not being revealed? Why is the Reynolds and Lively and Jones side, why are they being vague? I think you have to look at these people, all the parties involved, the major players. You have some players who really skate that line of ethics. And I would say they've probably crossed the line into unethical. And that's really the whole crux of this entire thing, is that you have people who are behaving ethically and people who are behaving unethically. And I think that's what we don't like, is the unethicalness of all this. So I don't know. There's so much to be answered, and who knows if we'll actually get the real answer.
Subpoena-gate. That's the Blake Lively, Stephanie Jones subpoena that nobody can seem to figure out what it's in reference to, right? Myself included. And it is quite confounding. Brian Friedman has come forward saying he hasn't seen it. He can't figure out what it's in reference to. He kind of alludes to the fact that he thinks it might be a phantom subpoena. Do with that what you will. It is weird that he hasn't seen it and that he can't seem to figure out what it's in reference to. I do not understand why Stephanie's team doesn't just attach it as an exhibit. Or, hey, just let the press release it, since apparently the press has seen it. According to the press, it's from the Manhattan Supreme Court. Supreme Court in the state of New York is the trial court. I know it's a misnomer. It's the only state that does that. I'm not a New York attorney. It's a bit weird that the other side hasn't seen the subpoena yet. The whole thing is just confounding. Apparently it wasn't stamped with the court's stamp, but it was referencing a Manhattan Supreme Court case, right? Like we've mentioned in last videos and a bunch of people on here have mentioned, there normally has to be a case in controversy to have a subpoena, especially to a third party, which it appears Stephanie Jones was. This was from October 1st as well, so prior to any litigation. The rest of it started in December. And it doesn't appear to be from an administrative body either, because it looks like it came from Blake's law firm, and it referenced Blake and Ryan. I did go to the New York State Unified Court System. Again, not a New York lawyer. I checked like all the boxes to be as broad as possible. So all roles, kind of all courts in the state of New York. I did go back and then do New York too, just in case it was like not pulling. I said all cases, not just active ones. And I said no to return only cases with future appearances. I did this for Blake, Ryan, and a couple of their businesses, like Maximum Effort, Betty Buzz, Blake Brown. The only thing I found was a Ryan Reynolds. He was a plaintiff. I don't even know if it's the right Ryan Reynolds, because it could be another Ryan person with that name, against a parking garage, and that was still open in New York City. I find it hard to believe that in a case like that, a subpoena to Stephanie Jones would be irrelevant. So yeah, this is all strange, but I did search it here, just a cursory inspection. I could be in the wrong. There could be something that I don't know how to search because I'm not normally doing this for New York. So the saga continues. I don't know why they don't just release it. What do you guys think? Leave it in the comments.
Justin Baldoni's publicist has spoken. I knew that there was going to be more to the story, and she just released a very lengthy statement in regards to the text messages. The text messages never got subpoena. It seems like maybe Blake Lively paid somebody to get those text messages, because how else would Blake Lively get these text messages? So the publicist, posted this statement to Facebook. Why a publicist would post to Facebook. But I digress. Hi, I never thought the day would come when I needed to defend myself with my own peers, but this certainly has been an interesting and devastating, quite frankly, couple of days, so here we are. But here are the facts. No, I was never subpoenaed. I found out my private text messages and emails were included in the complaint, and then NYT contacted me 1.5 hours after the receipt. I'd already reviewed the 80-page document and had questions prepared, and apparently also received thousands of pages of document. Our correspondence that we never saw, so it was clear this was coordinated effort, but nothing we haven't seen before since I've been working in talent PR for over 15 years now. I had recently left my previous firm, at which I was still with during this campaign, with a team who also participated in the campaign and a boss who oversaw and who had access to my work emails and my work phone. So we can deduce from that what you will. What the cherry-picked messages don't include, although not shockingly as it doesn't fit the narrative, is that there was no smear implemented, no negative press ever facilitated, no social combat plan. Although we prepared for first, it's our job to be ready for any scenario, but we didn't have to implement anything because the internet was doing the work for us. TikTok did the math. They unfollowed Justin Baldoni. They didn't take any pictures, during press. He has a valid point there. Sure, we talked about it, contemplated it. If we needed certain things, flagged accounts that we need to monitor, worked with social team to help us stay on top of the narrative so we could act quickly if needed. And yes, we rejoiced and joked in the fact that the fans were recognizing our clients' heart and work without us having to do anything but keep our heads down and focus on the positive interviews for our clients. As a tech show, we subformically reveled and again joked privately to each other about the internet's feedback to the women whose team was making our lives incredibly difficult over the course of the campaign. I'm human. The long hours, months of preparation on top of my day-to-day scope, it felt to see, although we're prepared, we didn't have to do anything over the top to protect our clients. Incredibly difficult, you say. In what way? Funny you should ask. I was notified at the start of the campaign, and opposing teams have been planting horrible stories about my client as a fail-safe if my client did not comply with the demands set forth for the campaign, which is why we brought on a crisis, as it's not something that I do, but my sole job was to put together interviews, screening opportunities, and speaking opportunities for my client in support of the film and a standard scope of work. I did my job. Now, what kind of woman would work against another woman who was a victim on all these things being claimed? Thanks for asking. After reviewing the evidence, facts, hard proof that countered every single thing that was being claimed and demanded at the start of production, I made a choice to stand by my clients of 5 years who had dedicated my life to the equal treatment of others, especially women. No instances of negative treatment of others, and who had a wonderful community and team at Wayfaring who all helped the same moral fortitude and live their life accordingly. As representative, we all need to make the choice, so I did the best of the ability and felt good about our efforts. Is my client perfect? No, in fact, he says that he's not perfect, so constantly to the point, I tell him he needs to be less self-deprecating because it could be taken the wrong way. Are Blake's feelings valid? It's not my position to say or speculate what she is feeling in those moments that she claims, and I would not slam a woman for speaking the truth, but at the end of the day, it is not the truth, and there is evidence that proves otherwise. Then as a representative, I have to do what I feel right as well. So obviously, there is way more to the story. There's her side, his side, and the truth is going to be in the middle. It's going to be very interesting when he countersuits her and we get the evidence. But it's really interesting to see how Blake Lively, got those text messages. I think it's illegal to get private text messages.
I want to tell everybody in the jury pool, if you're ever in this situation, do not give your phone back. Hang on to your phone. And I know that she did her best under the circumstances. You can only imagine how threatened she felt. Security guard, forensic expert, other people there looking at her. She's got an attorney there telling her she has to sign documents, which it still remains to be seen if those will be enforced against her, because it seems like there's some duress there. And she's shown her computer, her laptop, and then they say, give us the phone. And she says, well, will you promise me that if I go down to the Verizon store that you'll port the number to me and I can keep my iCloud and my emails and my texts and everything? No. You tell them, look, I'm not giving it back to you. If you want to go down to the Verizon store with me and we port the number over and I confirm that the number's ported over, then I'll give you the device back. Now, that's easy in hindsight to say, Keith.
Right.
I wasn't in the hot seat like Jennifer Abel was, but I want our jury pool to know if this ever happens, anything like this ever happens to you, ask to see an attorney, your own attorney, before you sign any documents. And then secondly, if there's a device and there's an argument over who owns that device and you have your personal information on there, I would fight hard to get that personal information back first, and then you're happy to give the device to them.
Yeah, and if they don't let you out of the conference room because it's a security guard, call the police. Some people might think, oh, that's being over the top. No, it's not. If you're being held captive, you have the right to call the police.
If you're not allowed to leave a place, what do we call that?
That's false imprisonment.
It's false imprisonment.
Yeah.
This is a really sensitive subject, but I think it's important based on the stuff I've been putting on here for people to talk about. Lawyers are a self-regulating profession. And what that means is there's no board of external people who regulate what lawyers are good and what lawyers are bad. We regulate ourselves. So to the extent that there are boards for performance problems or ethical problems, they are made up entirely of other lawyers. We regulate our own. And because of that, we have a responsibility to make sure that we do not malign each other unnecessarily. And so I want to be really careful when I say that this subpoena that somebody signed, supposedly, is ethically questionable. I am not saying that anyone necessarily violated the rules of professional conduct of the bars that they are a member of. I certainly am not implying that they have broken any laws, because laws don't really apply to stuff like that unless you're talking about legal malpractice. And I am not implying that anybody has committed legal malpractice. What I am implying is that there are questions about both the issuance and the compliance with a subpoena that does not follow the rules of civil procedure for the court that subpoena was issued from, and that both the person who issued it and the person who received it knew that. That raises questions about those people's candor, their judgment. Now, ultimately, lawyers in our ethical codes are responsible to our clients, right? Most of the time when lawyers do wrong by somebody and they're held accountable, either by their bar associations or through a legal malpractice claim, it's because they have done wrong by the clients, the people they represent. We have a duty to our clients to represent them zealously and to be candid with them and all kinds of other things. We have a duty to the court. We have one of those duties is the duty of candor. So I do feel a little icky about saying these documents were produced pursuant to a subpoena when we know that they were disclosed before and we know the subpoena is problematic. And I, as a lawyer, wouldn't necessarily want to put my name on that. Not because it's per se illegal or per se going to get my license taken away. That's not how it works. But just like with everything else, lawyers have codes of ethics, and each lawyer responds to that differently, right? Ethics are very personal. It's the same for doctors, right? What are your ethics? One person's willing to take it further than another. And what I'm trying to communicate is that if this was done the way we think it might have been, those are risks that I personally would not have taken. And I think that there are questions around the people who did and why they did. For me, they're not going to lose their license. Worst case scenario, somebody files a complaint with their bar and they go get their hand slapped by the bar. That could happen. People get disbarred for things like stealing their client's money or ghosting their client for 3 years or something. They don't get disbarred for stuff like this. In terms of legal malpractice, the only reason Lively, or Jones for that matter, would go after the lawyers who advise them to engage in this process for malpractice is if it ends up hurting them, right? That would be claims by these women against their own lawyers. And right now there's no reason for them to think that or do that because they haven't gotten in any trouble for it. So what's on the table right now is this a lack of candor to the court? Is this saying to a judge in a complaint, these were produced pursuant to a subpoena, when really there's a huge asterisk at the end of that? What is the judge going to think about that? What is he going to do about it? What might that mean for the case? And I know that nobody likes it when I say it's unclear or every case is a little snowflake and you never know how it's going to be applied in any particular case, but I'm sorry, that's how it works. Judge Lyman, let's say this is presented to him in some motion or some way. He could absolutely flip his shit and issue an order to show cause why he shouldn't enter sanctions against the lawyers who signed this. And this is a violation of candor to the court and a violation of 75 different ethical rules, and here they are. He could also say, well, we'll deal with it when we get to trial. It's up to his judgment. So again, I know that's unsatisfactory, and I appreciate that people are asking good questions. And I do think that this is one of the reasons why people don't always trust lawyers, because it's like, well, stop doing shady things. I'm sure the people who did this and the people who are defending it think that they are defending their client. They are representing their client to the best of their ability, and they're probably right. But it is clear that it has become a PR issue more than a legal issue at this point. And I'm certainly not going to get on the internet and call for anybody to lose their license or lose their job or get sanctioned by a judge. It's not my place. But I am willing to say that if I were asked to do this, I would have concerns. Whether that's happening now, I do not know.
Don't forget the Stephanie Jones PR lawsuit that is happening. I think it's actually the most important piece of this entire pie, because don't forget it was her, Stephanie Jones, who purportedly gave Blake and Ryan all of that ammo to try to assassinate the character of Justin Baldoni and take down Wayfarer. That was how they got the emails and the text messages. And this is now going, it's kind of heating up in the courtroom. As a refresher, who is Stephanie Jones? Okay, Stephanie Jones was the It PR girl in Hollywood. She runs Stephanie Jones PR. She has run that for about a decade, and she really is your stereotypical early 2000s devil wears Prada type, I just drink coffee and take Adderall and don't eat, I don't need food to survive type woman. It's known in Hollywood, just like you don't cross Ari Emanuel, you don't cross Steph. Don't cross Steph at all in Hollywood, because Steph will ruin you. She will destroy you. So she has, or I should say she had, we'll get to that in a little bit, an A-list clientele book. Her firm repped everyone from Dwayne Johnson to Tom Brady to Jeff Bezos, Lauren Sanchez. I mean, the tippity top, right? And beneath her, just to bring up that chart, because this is very important, was Jennifer Abel. Jennifer Abel was working at Stephanie Jones, Jonesworks PR, and they had Justin Baldoni, Wayfarer Students, as their client, and they were very happy to have them as a client. Now, to be clear, Stephanie Jones did not work with this account directly because she only handled the big accounts. She's hanging out with Jeff Bezos. She's hanging out with Lauren Sanchez. She would send the smaller accounts down to people like Jennifer Abel. And so to remind you of just how powerful Steph is, she's doubly powerful because she's also married into power. Her husband, just to show you, this is Jason Hodes. He is a senior partner at WME who reps Tom Brady. So if you angered Steph in any capacity, you could potentially lose any opportunity to work with the biggest artist agency in the world. That's why another reason nobody messed with her. Well, in May of 2024, last year, so in the months leading up to the It Ends With Us premiere, Stephanie Jones actually began going through a PR crisis of her own because Puck News and Business Insider reported that her A-list clients were beginning to walk due to her erratic behavior. She lost Dwayne Johnson. She lost Lauren Sanchez. They both dropped her. And what was running at the same time was that Jennifer Abel, who was handling the Wayfarer account, tendered her resignation on July 10th. And she gave Stephanie 6 weeks. She was scheduled to leave on in early August, on August 23rd. But then 2 days before she was supposed to leave, Stephanie Jones calls her into her office. Okay. She says, okay, Jennifer, I know you're supposed to leave in 2 days. Your 6 weeks is almost up, but surprise, I'm forcing you to hand over your phone. She had security present. She had this is according to the lawsuit, a forensic data extraction technical expert present. She had an attorney, and she had the PR firm's chief of staff who flew in unannounced from New York for the occasion. So you imagine you're leaving a job. People are crazy. Just let people leave the job, you know? But I think Steph's a little paranoid because she's losing her clients. Articles are being written about her, and she just wants to, maybe she thinks Jennifer Abel's behind it all. And so she gets all of this stuff, and that is how she then handed it over, I'm guessing, to Leslie Sloane PR, who reps Blake and Ryan. And that is how they received these communications that would eventually be doctored for that New York Times piece. So she's very crucial to this. But I would watch the Stephanie PR one because she might be the linchpin to how all of this went down. Anyways, she believes they secretly conspired to undermine her reputation. And honestly, at the core of all of these lawsuits is just tremendous Hollywood ego.